back to Citizen Live at 9, and it's time for Opinion Court. Let me start by introducing my panel to you this evening. To my immediate right is the Grand Mullah, Senior Counsel Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi. We also have Hassan Olenado. He's the Supreme Council of Kenya Secretary General, seated right next to Ahmed Nasir. And then to the right of Mr. Olenado is sorry, Professor, I can never forget your name, Edward Kisiangani. He's our political analyst. I apologize for that. And of course, to his right is Dr. Sheikh Abdallah Khair. I hope I got that right today. Thank you. Thank you. He is, of course, from the Kenyatta University and is also an imam. So, gentlemen, welcome to the program. I want to begin with you, Ahmed Nasir. What is your understanding of the problem of radicalization of Kenya's youth?
I mean, that's a term we hear it often, but I mean, do we have empirical evidence really to show that Muslim youth are per se radicalized? I mean, the fact that, you know, there is some terrorist attack in Mombasa or Nairobi does not necessarily really mean that Muslim youth are radicalized, because it's more of a political term that's used by the police force. But I don't think we can really pinpoint and say that Muslim youth are radicalized. Radicalized to do what?
Certainly not all of them. I suppose the study that I can refer to would be a UN one, I think in 2011, that pointed out to the fact that young Kenyans coming from marginalized communities are often found to be easy prey, if you like, for terrorists who go ahead and then indoctrinate them into their ideologies.
I mean, that's a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, the wretched of the earth normally are a little bit more radical than those who are comfortable in their skin. And Muslim youth, you know, whether they're in the coast or northeastern, are marginalized in more than one sense. So, I mean, if they feel they are out of the loop, I mean, I don't think you can blame them. But I don't think one can say that, you know, Muslim youth per se are radicalized.
In Kenya, what would you say, Olenado? Because you were in fact at one time, I believe, the chair of the Kenya Muslim Youth Alliance. Have you found this to be a problem at all?
Yes, actually, and it's a problem. What we cannot measure is the magnitude of their problem. But I am aware of a number of research activities that have been undertaken to try to establish what are the root causes of radicalization and the extent in which the radicalization have reached the community. But honestly, it is a problem.
Okay, yeah. So perhaps no empirical figures as to how big it is. What would you say is the main cause that may have some sections of the young Muslim population easily enticed by those who preach a radical message?
There are two issues, and the whole question of Muslim youth radicalization, for example. One is the social problem that goes along. There's a long history of the marginalization, historical injustices, lack of opportunities, and a skewed distribution of natural resources. Then there is also ideological phenomena that which is fed by the international geopolitics that are happening elsewhere in the world. So all these things are actually meeting and making the local scenario a little bit difficult. And how this is happening is that actually ideology or religious concepts are used to recruit the young people.
Okay. Yeah. Let me come to you, Sheikh Khair. Have you in any way been able to identify madrasas or other meetings where you could say that this is a potential area where the right Muslim message is not being preached?
Well, first, to me, radical has two meanings. It has a positive and a negative aspect of it. We don't encourage the negative one, but we do encourage the positive one.
Which would be?
Changes. Changes and...
I beg your pardon for that. Perhaps you could... do you feel comfortable to proceed? Okay, let's give him a chance to settle. Professor, your thoughts? He just mentioned that there may be a positive meaning to the word radical, perhaps passionate. What do you think of it?
Yes, I think the starting point of this discussion would have been to just give a quick review of what radicalization is, and it is about a group or a set of individuals or just an individual or a group increasingly adopting very extreme social or political ideals within the society. And that group also wants radical changes, which means drastic changes that should come through by way of revolution. Now, the radicalization is not necessarily a bad idea, but it can be both negative and positive, as puts it, because when it becomes violent, it becomes negative. But radicalization can still be positive if it envisages changes through, for example, constitutional means and through the legal processes. So those are the two levels. But again, I think even as you asked Ahmed Nasir about radicalization, I think you focused on the Muslim community and the Muslim youth, and I think that is not the big point. The big point is that radicalization in that context of people holding extreme views is affecting everybody in this country. If you look at the Muslim aspect is one, but we also have the Mungiki aspect, for example, which has nothing to do with Islam, but they hold some extreme religious ideas and political ideas. Then you have fellows like the Baghdad boys just holding extreme ideas about transport. Then you have others in Kisumu. You heard about China, and one group is calling itself America. So we have a set, and the Chingoro and Amachuma in Guzeland. So we have a group of people, and in fact groupings which have very radical, which means extreme ideas about the way this society is supposed to be organized. They want the overthrow of structures that have already been established. Now the idea is this change that some of these groups are calling for the change that the rest of the Kenyan people want? Do we want change through violence, or do we want change through peaceful means? That is a bigger question. But I think that in fact, in terms of understanding the problem is bigger than what you are seeing in Mombasa and other parts of the country.
All right, let me come back to you, Sheikh. What are your thoughts?
From where he has stopped, the problem is bigger. I'm sorry, because of them. The problem is bigger more than what we are seeing today. To me, what I am trying to understand with the current situation, this is a long history. And radicalization, as I have said, there is positive and negative. The positive one is people want to change. People are tired with a certain system. And today is not a Kenyan problem, it is a global problem. To me, what I believe, there is no terrorism war here. There is no war against terrorists. The war here is between Islam and capitalism, of which that is the major source. So countries like Kenya and others, we have been invited to this war, but in realistic matter, our way is that this is a war between Islam and capitalism.
Let me challenge you on that, because often what in fact we have heard from the Muslim leadership is that those who perpetrate these sort of terrorist attacks, and I'm sure you would agree an incident such as Westgate was in fact a terrorist attack, is perpetrated by criminals and not by Islam. So now it seems to me that perhaps we're at a crossroads on this question. Was Westgate not a terror attack, for instance? Was that a war against capitalism, or was that terrorism against Kenyan citizens?
Neither can anybody say what's happened really in West, because even the report we got, it was not comprehensive. It was taken to the parliament and was returned back. Nobody knew what really happened in Westgate.
But you were saying
to me,
that
what I'm saying
was not a terror attack against Kenyan citizens. It may have perhaps been an affront on capitalism.
What I'm trying to explain to you is that today terrorism is being used as a stepping stone, but the really issue is war between capitalism and Islam. Why I'm saying this is that after the Cold War between capitalism and communism, capitalism sat down and started analyzing the whole scenario of what happened between the Western power and the Eastern power. Then they discovered that there were people who were trained by capitalists as mujahideen. Those mujahideen who were in Afghanistan, they were fully supported by the Western power. When they finished the war between them and the Western, between them and the mujahideen, they came to discover that they had already trained the people whom they had no place to put them. And then what happened is that the war now between the Mujahideen and the capitalists started. From there now, people started
let me just make us a little interjection. I don't necessarily agree with what Imam is saying, because we can't mix. Islam is a religion, and then capitalism is a mode of production. In this context, therefore, you can't mix a mode of production with a religion. If you have somebody
no, what I'm saying is these are ideologies. These are ideologies.
You can't argue like that, because there are people who are living in the Western capitals who are poor and they want changes. Equally, there are people who are living in the Islamic countries, but they are suffering and they want changes. If you look at countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Oman, we have really very poor people there, and they are not necessarily being mistreated by the Western capitalist systems, but they are being mistreated by their own Islamic brothers. So let us differentiate between the religious extremism and a flawed mode of production within a system. If we do that,
what I was trying to say is that...
Please hold on. Let me bring in a fellow Muslim scholar, if you like, Dr. Olenado.
I am not a doctor, really.
I bestowed on you a title. I'll take it back.
Yeah,
okay. You are, of course, in the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims as a Director of Religious Affairs.
No. I am the Deputy Secretary General.
As the Deputy Secretary General, again, I apologize. Yeah. What do you think of what your counterpart has said?
I have a different opinion from Dr. Khair's interpretation, with all due respect. Our point of view at this particular point is that it is true, the challenge we are facing in this country today and the rest of Eastern Horn of Africa and the larger world are two things. One, as I said before, there is the social problem. That one we cannot run away from it. Secondly, when I talked of ideology, I'm talking of ideological interpretation of the classical traditions and the Quranic verses. How we tend to interpret and understand what the relevant meanings based on circumstances in which we live. That is what is actually happening, and that is the challenge that we are facing today. So to me, what I have been doing for the last number of years is actually how do we come up with the strategies in which we can help have the scholars interpreting the correct meaning of the verses of the Quran that sometimes are misunderstood by individuals to mean something else, or used to incite parts of population towards violence.
Ahmed Nasir, please come in on this question, because the Mombasa County Commissioner is on record saying that the differences between SUPKEM and the Council of Imams are partly to blame for what we are seeing in terms of quote-unquote radicalizing or preaching different aspects of the faith, and it's opening up youth to different interpretations of the Quran. What do you make of it? Do you think that's...
I mean, let's go back to the term radicalization, because I think you're using it really euphemistically. There's something you don't want to say, but you are referring to radicalism. I mean,
what would that be? What would that be? Let's be clear. I'm talking about young people who perhaps go in pursuit of the real faith and then are taught something that is counter to it and used eventually to cause havoc.
But I mean, I don't know what specifically the county governor said. I mean, I've seen him on TV saying so many things, most of them not very competent. But I think the issue of the Muslim community in Kenya, I mean, the fact that there's a difference between SUPKEM and Council of Imams cannot by any stretch of imagination lead to radicalization of Muslim youths.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have issues of, problems, Muslims, I mean, but I don't think it's even really, radical Islamic. I mean, the small boys who have issues in the coast or Nairobi have certain political agenda more than religious agenda. Yes.
But you see, the point is this. Honestly, in that context, even when people, the youth are being radicalized, I think the most important thing, whether they are doing it at the coast or they are doing it in Nairobi, is to ask what causes this. And that is the basic point that I think you are alluding to, the social problems of this country. Youth who never even professed Islam are now being, recruited in places like Al-Shabaab cells. The reason is that the poverty levels in these countries have gone up, and the youth are frustrated that successive governments are not offering them the services they want. Some jobs are distributed through ethnicity. 70% of the Kenyan youth, 60% of the Kenyan population is below 25. And then 70% of the youth who have left school and are out of jobs. So they are frustrated by the social structures here. Now, they become fertile ground for anybody, whether they are in Mungiki or anybody who comes to tell them, look, if I'm Mungiki, my style of doing things will save you from this frustration. They are fertile ground. Then the so-called radical Islamic preachers also tell them that Islam, if you radicalize, change the whole world and you Islamize the whole world, you also will solve your problem. And that's why I think Imam is almost becoming a radical Islamic person. And in fact, in my opinion, he's a radical Islamic preacher, because he's saying that there's a fight between Islam and capitalism. So he is telling these young people that if we Islamized the whole world, then the problems that the youth in this country are facing will disappear.
Allow the Imam to clarify his position.
What I was trying to say, there are main factors. I mentioned that one.
Yes.
Historical injustice is also among them. I think also the media contribute to that. Let me give you an example of which many of the youth are complaining on that along the coast and other areas. When the issue of the mosque, when it was attacked, that was against human rights. The media never gave it a coverage the way they gave to the church. So these are some of the things when you sit with
Are you referring to the Musa Mosque?
Musa, yeah, the Musa Mosque. I'm trying to show you that there are so many things which make people to feel or to feel that they are marginalized, and it leads to radicalization.
Let's move to the way forward.
The way forward now.
Let's move to the way forward. What needs to be done? And let me begin with you, Ahmed Nasir. What do you think needs...
I mean, I think there's a gross exaggeration, yes. No, but you said the way forward. The way forward.
That was a statement, not the question. What needs to be done, in your opinion, in particular by government? The government has been accused of having a counter-terrorism strategy, which is mainly a security operation, and not really listening and identifying the needs of the community. What's the way forward in terms of a counter-radicalization strategy, quote-unquote?
I think the most important thing is the police force must stop killing Muslim leaders, like they've been doing. Everybody knows, that all these killings. Don't be alarmed. Don't be alarmed.
I'm not sure that can be proved. And those remain your views.
No. It is the truth. We all know that every Muslim leader who has been killed in this country are killed by the police force.
You are a man of the law.
Yes.
A man who respects the law.
Yes.
Then I'm sure you would agree that needs to be backed by evidence.
Yes, I've written about this. I've written when my own client, who's called Khan, was killed. I said it's the police who killed, and nobody could disprove that. You can't have a certain sector of society that's dying the way people die, and nobody is brought to book. So the most important thing is for the government. I think the police should really learn what happened in Brazil, Argentina, Chile, where, the security forces killed a certain sector of societies, and 5, 10, 15 years later on, there are major judicial investigation. And I'm sure one day there will be a judicial investigation on how Muslim clerics are dying like flies. And I think that's the most important thing. There must be an end to this extrajudicial killing.
And what happens in terms of reaching out to the communities and addressing their basic needs? Because I believe it was still the same UN report that I referred to of 2011 mentioned that NGOs are operating in communities, providing these basic services where government has failed, and using that as a platform to go ahead and preach an alternative violent message.
Actually, all Muslim, if you look at the very prominent Muslim NGOs in the 90s, all of them have been stopped from operating in this Kenya. All of them have been deregistered in the countries they used to come from, like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and there is not actually a very prominent Muslim NGO that nowadays operates.
But let me ask you, Nasir, if you say that the police should stop killing Muslim clerics and that is the solution, what solution do you have for people who are professing Islam and they are killing Christians? You see, this is a major thing. And if Christians are killed and you don't say anything, the churches are bombed, the bishops die in the churches, And that means nothing. And when the police rush there and they chase after somebody, and then they kill, you say they're killing Muslim clerics. I mean, we must all go. My suggestion is this.
Professor, I'm worried with your line of argument, because we must be clear that we respect the rule of law and that
no, the police is focusing on the police. What I'm saying is this. Because sometimes the police are caught.
Kindly, one at a time, just finish your point.
Sometimes the police are caught in a very difficult situation. And in this way, I'm not known to defend the police. But in this case, they are empowered to look after our security. And they find that some youth, some clerics, and you know it's on record.
Are you trying to tell us that a kind of quote-unquote shoot-to-kill order without due respect
no, I'm not talking about
law okay?
I'm not talking about, because he has talked about the police. And I don't have evidence that a policeman has killed anybody. The accusation that is coming out is that some police people have killed others. But now my counter is this. We have had some Muslim clerics, for example, speak in the open that if you are a Muslim, you must be doing ABCD, and you know how bad some of those things are, encouraging violence. And we don't see equal condemnation for this kind of thing.
Let's allow Sheikh to come.
One thing is this: Islam always is against violence. We as Muslim leaders, we always condemn. We condemn what happened in the church in Likoni. We condemn what happened in Masjid Musa. We condemn what happened in Islay, and we shall keep on condemning whatever violence happened anywhere, whether in the country or outside the country. But the issue is, when our brother was mentioning, I think definitely he is a lawyer, he has an evidence on that. But put it aside.
Then he should take it to the court of law, Ahmed Nasser.
Exactly.
I will take the court of law when they arrest the perpetrators.
Which policeman has killed who?
All right, gentlemen, we must draw this. Okay, perhaps you can make a quick comment on
Two
that
things
before we move on.
that I will want to say, that there's a workable way forward, that if everyone else is concerned about it. One, they should be, for instance, a counter-terrorism strategy, which I can tell you for sure, Kenya doesn't have one. There is no counter-terrorism strategy in this country. What we have is the what do you call, the act, the bill, whatever it is, that is not even being functional. We have not seen it being used properly, to an extent that the police are now applying what the Nasser is suggesting to be extrajudicial killing. Two, there is need for the government machinery to be clear on how it carries out its duty and accountable on their actions, because the kind of actions the government is undertaking today is radicalizing more than actually the radicalization itself. Because if you have people being, everyone else being arrested and taken to the police, and you can only be released with that kind of extortion, and people being victimized can actually radicalize more. So there is a need for the police or security agents in this country to conduct themselves in a professional manner, so that they can actually have the confidence of the people. We cannot afford to isolate the community.
That is one way.
Professor, unfortunately, I'll not be able to take your comment on this, because we truly must wind up. A tough conversation, but an important one. And I want to thank you all for your candid views. To my immediate right, Ahmed Nasser Abdullahi, who is, of course, Senior Counsel. Next to him, the Supreme Council of Kenya Secretary General Hassan Ole Nado, and, of course, Professor Edward Kisiangani, who will be staying on the panel with us for our next discussion, and Dr. Sheikh Abdallah Kher of the Kenyatta University, a lecturer and an imam. I thank you all for joining us on this program.